Te mata tātou? Ka pai. Kia ora mai tātou katoa, nau mai haere mai ki tēnei o ngā hōtaka o ngā ahi pō, o tēnei kaipapa o tō tātou rā, addressing alcohol among Rangatahi Māori. Tuatahi rā, ka tuku atu tētahi karakia ki tō tātou. Mātua nui te rangi I tēnei ata, kia papai rawa te huarahi mo tēnei haora. No reira me inoi tātou. Tukua te wairua kia rere ki ngā taumata hei arahi I a tātou mahi, mea tātou whai I ngā tikanga a rātou mā. Kia mau, kia ita, kia kore ai e ngaro, kia pupuri, kia whakamaua, kia tīna haumi e hui e ai ki. Kātia kera e tipu e rea mō ngā rā o tau ao, arahina tō iwi e. Tō ngā kau ki ngā taonga o tūpuna, tō wairua ki te ariki. Kia kaupatau katoa e te rangatahi, te oranga o te ao katoa, kia mau, kia kaha pūpuri tia, te mana o tō tātou ariki. Kātia kera ka mihi tuatai ki tō tātou matua nui te rangi, nāna te timatanga me te whakaotinga o ngā mea katoa. Ki tō tātou kingi atu heitia e noho ana I raro I tōna ahu rewa tapu, o ona mātua tūpuna rire hau, pai mā rire. Ki ngā mate huhua kua wheturangi tia o tō tātou rohe, o tō tātou motu katoa o Aotearoa, ko mene atu ki te pō, haere whakangaro atu rā. O tira kia tātou katoa, ko tai a tinana mai, Mārunga hui topa nei, te hui mo tēnei kaipapa, mo te waipiro I Wainganui I ngā Rangatahi Māori, tēnei te mihi atu kia koutou. Kia ora everybody, I do speak English. Ko me kaere Sydney tōku ingoa, he moko puna tēnei o tauranga moana, ngā te rangi, Ngāti rangi nui, Ngāti koro ki kahukura, kai aku pānga o Waikato, he pānga hoki ki roto o Taranaki, he pānga anō hoki, I'm also from the mighty Cook Islands in Rarotonga. So, yeah, kia ora everyone. But it's good to see you all today. My background, I work at Maitirangi Iwi Trust under the CAD banner, Community Action Youth Alcohol and Drugs. I can see some of my CAD friends here on this webinar today who are going to be judging and plucking and judging what I'm doing today, and they're probably going to roast me tomorrow at CAD conference. Here we are not. But yeah, I've been working in this role for 2 years now, and I've been pulled in with Jude and a lot of convincing from Abby to jump on today. Kia whakanui ai tēnei kaupapa. Engari, ka tuku atu te rākau kia koe, Abby, taku hoa. And or do I give it to you? So we also meet and then get back to ka pai, Abby, kia koe te wā. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe e hoa mikaere, tēnā tātou katoa. I te taho tōku koro, ko te kōhatu whakaere a ngā toroirangi te maunga, ko Waihau te awa, ko Tainoi te waka, ko Ngāti Maru te iwi, ko Ngāti Oa te hapu, ko Mātai whetū te marae. I te tahu o tōku kuia, ko Tāwhirirangi te maunga, ko Mohaka te awa, ko Timu te waka, ko Ngāti Kahungunu te iwi, ko Ngāti Pahauera te hapu, ko Waipapa ai iwi te marae, ko Abby tōku ingoa. I am a senior advisor in the Child and Youth Wellbeing team at Health Promotion Te Whatu Ora, and I'm very excited to be here with my friend Mikaere today. Yeah, thank you everyone for having us.
Kia ora everyone, ko Sukringo tōku ingoa, ko takitimu te waka, ko takitimu te pai maunga, ko Aparima te awa, ko te ara akiwa te moana, ko te takutai o te titi tōku marae. And he mahinui ki koroa, Mikaere koroa ko Abby. Tēnā koroa, he mahi nui hoki ki a Jude mā, nā kaimahi mō tēnei rangahau, tēnā koutou. He mahi nui hoki ki a koutou katoa ko taimai I tēnei ahihahi, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. So I'm Sir Kringle, and welcome everyone, and I'm going to take the role of presenting the information that has come from Youth 19, and then I'm going to ask Mikaere and Abby to provide some wise commentary on that. And you'll have the opportunity to ask questions. Most of you, well, you'll be muted, but please feel free to put questions in the chat. This webinar is part of a wider project, which is a partnership between Alcohol Health Watch and the Adolescent Health Research Group. And it's been funded by Te Herenga Hauora and NIB Foundation, and we're very grateful for that support. And the aims of the wider project are, that alcohol reform is currently being debated, and there are some bills that are soon to be in front of the House. And so we're interested in sharing the information from Youth 19 and from the Youth 2000 series more broadly, so that people can consider that when they're thinking about writing submissions around the bills. And in their mahi, their day-to-day mahi as well. There's an advisory group and an analyst and we're very grateful for their help with this. And of course, thank you to all the rangatahi who have taken part in the Youth 2000 series, survey series. So with that, I'm just going to share my screen. And then I'm going to go up here. Is that okay? Great, excellent. I've talked a little bit. So the Youth 2000 survey series has been going since 2001. The Youth 19 series was our fourth in the series of surveys. We've got a number of fact sheets as part of this project around alcohol and young people. So there are 4 that are available now from either the Alcohol Health Watch website or the Youth 19 website, and you can see the links there. And then the one that we're focusing on today is understanding alcohol use and harm among Rangatahi Māori secondary school students, and that's released today or very shortly, and then coming soon we've got fact sheets around Rainbow adolescents and Pacifica adolescents. So we need, and I don't think I need to tell the people who are gathered here today, that when we're thinking about alcohol use and rangatahi, we need to really think about the context in which rangatahi live their lives and experiment and use alcohol. And so, of course, there's intergenerational experiences of colonisation and racism and inequity that really colour our lives today. And we need to bear that in mind and think about how we can address those wider issues that are so influential on our lives today. We also need to understand that adolescent or rangatahi alcohol use is often a symptom of broader social issues, which can affect young people directly or via the impacts on whānau wellbeing. And the neighbourhood environment influences adolescent alcohol use and harm. And so things like the number of liquor stores that are in neighbourhood environments. And Māori whānau often live in areas that are oversaturated with places that sell alcohol. We know that exposure to alcohol marketing influences people's use of alcohol. And in this study from Aotearoa, Tim Chambers and his colleagues used a kid's camera, which is a camera that children wear, to record what is around them in the environment. And they looked at exposure to alcohol marketing for 11 to 13-year-olds. And on average, for the whole group of those children, it was 4.5 times a day that they were exposed to some type of alcohol marketing. But for rangatahi or tamariki, it was 10.5 times a day. And for New Zealand European, that was 2.5 times a day. So, and then in high deprivation neighbourhoods, again, it was 10.5 times a day. And so that's massive exposure in, 11 to 13-year-olds. And then the types of marketing that were recorded on these cameras were sports sponsorship, shop front signage, and then merchandise. So the Youth 19 findings. So over between 2007, 12 and 19, a higher proportion of, increasingly greater proportion of rangatahi report that they've never drunk alcohol. And so in 2019, a third of Māori secondary school students in the survey reported that they had not drunk alcohol. Now that's fantastic news. And compared to the older age groups, so, you know, Pākeke, relatively few secondary school age rangatahi drink at all. But we like to focus on rangatahi because even though they're less likely to drink than Pākeke, those that do are at greater risk of some kind of harm. Physiologically, alcohol use is important for brain development, or not using alcohol is important for brain development. And the typical drinking style of young people and the settings that they drink can often mean that they're more at risk of harm from alcohol, and those harms can have a lifelong impact. The other piece of good news is that among those rangatahi that are using alcohol, they're over time, they're using alcohol less frequently. So this is again 2007, 12 and 19. And in 2019, 39% of rangatahi reported that they'd used alcohol in the last month, and that's a substantial reduction since 2007, and 10% reported that they had used alcohol in the last week, and again that's a substantial reduction since 2007. So that's really good news. The amount consumed is often high, and so this data is just from 2019. And we can see, so boys are the blue and girls are the purple. And there's 1 to 2 drinks on the left and then 10 or more drinks on the right. And you can see that there's still relatively high proportion of rangatahi reporting that they have 5 or 9 or 10 or more drinks when they drink. And then and this is the types of harms that young people report. This data is from 2012. We didn't ask the alcohol harm question in 2019. And the reason for that was there were some other areas that we wanted to ask questions about. So every time we do the survey, we review the questions and we say, is there anything new that's happened in the lives of rangatahi since our last survey that we want to be asking rangatahi about? And if there are, then we insert some questions about that. But that means that we need to take some other questions away because we can't just have the survey getting bigger and bigger and bigger over time. And so in 2019, the alcohol harm was one of the questions that we took out. So this is 2012 data. And it's from people who reported that they were current drinkers. So rangatahi who are current drinkers, Māori and non-Māori, and Māori is the blue and non-Māori is the purple. And you can see that there are a range of things that young people reported that they'd had experienced after using alcohol. And that ranges from affecting their performance at school, getting injured, doing things that could have got you in serious trouble, having unsafe sex. And so the most common ones were around injury, things that could get you into serious trouble, and unsafe sex. There are the inequities in harm, where Māori are more likely to experience harm. This is again 2012 data. And we developed a harm score from the harm indicators that we saw in the last slide. And it had a total, the scores could range from 0 to 27. And then we used some statistics to look at the influence of deprivation and ethnicity on alcohol harm. And what we see here is that the mean alcohol harm score was 1.65 for non-Māori and 2.61 for Māori. And that difference, because these things here called confidence intervals don't overlap, so 1.79 is lower than 2.34, that means that's a significant difference. We can also see that the harm scores were slightly greater in female rangatahi than male rangatahi, and that rangatahi who lived in higher deprivation also reported higher scores. We know that there are some things that determine whether or not you experience alcohol harm, and so that's the way you drink. So whether or not you binge drink, and that for adults, women is more than 4 standard units in a 4-hour drinking session. For men, it's more than 5. Whether the amount that you consume and the frequency of alcohol overall. Younger students and girls report greater harm at the same level of consumption of alcohol than older students or boys. And the context is really important. So where young people are drinking, is there any adult supervision of their drinking, what kind of supports they have, and what the social norms around drinking are. And I think it's fair to say that in New Zealand, you know, we've had a history of a kind of binge type drinking approach, which hopefully is changing over time, but probably derives from the time when pubs shut at 6 o'clock and people used to go after work and drink as much as they could before 6 o'clock closing. We asked rangatahi about their sources of alcohol, and this is the 2019 data. And these findings were very similar amongst the Māori and non-Māori rangatahi. So nearly 60% reported that parents had given it to them, 37% reported friends, 22% got someone else to drink, to buy it for them, and then siblings and other adults were important, taking it home from home without permission, 15%, and then 12% were reported that they were able to buy it themselves. And so just wanted to highlight that because the data here is all from students who are under 18 years of age, the legal age of being able to buy alcohol. So this is an important policy and regulatory piece of information. We've also had a look at what the risk factors for high-risk drinking are for Māori, and we've ranked them in how strong the relationship is between the risk factor and high-risk drinking. And so that's this thing called the odds ratio. So experience of sexual abuse was the strongest risk factor for high-risk drinking, and rangatahi who'd reported that experience were nearly 2.5 times more likely to have high-risk drinking patterns. And 21% of rangatahi reported previous sexual abuse and 17% of non-Māori. Being treated unfairly because of your ethnicity, so ethnic discrimination was the second highest, and students, rangatahi who reported ethnic discrimination were over twice as likely to report high-risk drinking. Witnessing violence at home, either towards another child, being hit or hurt yourself, or witnessing violence between adults was important as well. Parents concerned about having enough money to buy food, and then past or present involvement with oranga tamariki or children young CYFS. Those students were nearly a third more likely to report high-risk drinking patterns. And in these statistical analyses, we've done what we call adjusted for age and sex and for deprivation. And then protective factors for Māori. And so again, we've rated these, I didn't put the odds ratios in, sorry, but all of these are significant protective factors. So whānau usually always wants to know where the rangatahi is and who they're with, was the strongest protective factor against for non-drinking or low-risk drinking, sorry. So it's a protective factor. So if they had that factor, then they were more likely to report non-drinking or low-risk drinking. Feeling safe at home all or most of the time, getting enough quality time with whānau, feeling that teachers care at school about them, a sense of belonging to school, having someone in their whānau who they can trust to share their feelings with. And then the other important factor, we have a whanaungatanga scale, and that has a whānau component. And so high levels of whanaungatanga with whānau was also associated with non-drinking and low-risk drinking. So the conclusions are that we've got some encouraging trends. Although there has been some suggestion since 2019 that youth drinking may be going up again from the New Zealand Health Survey and the What About Me survey. There are ethnic differences in drinking patterns and alcohol harm that reflect history and context and environment. The biggest ethnic difference is around the quantity of alcohol drunk at each drinking session and the exposure to alcohol marketing. And obviously that data, you'll recall, is not from our study, but I just wanted to pop that in there because I think that it's a major problem for us that as a society we need to address, and that, you know, young children and young people should not be exposed to alcohol marketing. We, of course, are best placed to identify solutions, but we need an appropriate policy framework to support the solutions that we want to implement. So I'll just stop sharing. Excellent. And I might pass over to Abby and to see, and so we're interested in what are the implications for reducing alcohol harm at the policy level, at the community level, at the school level, and at the whānau level. And so I might just pass over to Abby. Kia ora, Abby.
Kia ora, Sue. I think first we were going to talk about alcohol harm at the policy level. I have two things. Number one, give effect to the tiriti o waitangi. We need to give effect to te tiriti. We need to accept and action our tiriti obligations to each other. We need to involve Māori leadership, Māori decision making, and Māori-led solutions when it comes to policy that affects alcohol. And the second thing is involving rangatahi in policy change. How long are rangatahi going to ask to be considered when policy makers are changing and making policies and leaving rangatahi out? Yeah. Mikaere, do you have anything to add?
I suppose from a community's perspective, I work a lot in community-based initiatives in Tauranga. And one of my biggest projects I have going on here at Ngaitirangi is tackling alcohol licensing in Tauranga. I think a few of my CAD friends have already heard the story. Here we are. One alcohol license hearing that our runanga had tackled head on without, well, I suppose the police. We usually go into these things with police, Toitoura Public Health with us as well. But we went into it alone. It was this alcohol store in Sandhurst Drive in Papamoa. Don't expect you to know where that is. Here we. Little did they know, and did our DLC know, and they raised it in my objection, my evidence, was that it was a 2 kilometre distance. Well, it's over a highway bridge, but it's close enough for a 2-minute drive from a papakainga and a social housing project, which is our Mangatawa papakainga housing area. They had no idea, and I pressed it onto them, back onto the DLC. Well, it's not really, it's we have to have somebody on that panel to understand where our people are and how this is going to affect our people in Tauranga directly, because you have no idea, and the applicant had no idea, the DLC had no idea that there was a papakainga up there that struggles with issues of not so much just drug use, alcohol use, and it is also on the marae there's an alternative education area that is vulnerable rangatahi that ease of access to alcohol as well, which is very important. That's why it is important to associate iwi Māori or the local iwi Māori runanga or iwi people around to sit on these tables to make these decisions. Or something else. Yeah, so that's my latest kaupapa that I've been grinding on at the moment. And just a small one as well, Tauranga City Council is actively recruiting district licensing committee members, and one of our Urio Ngaitirangi interviewed yesterday. So fingers crossed to be here tomorrow how it all goes on. So it's one step ahead. Te whai au te marama for us to getting our own uri onto these decision-making tables. I suppose another small one as well, which was promoted a positive outlook for our Rangatahi Māori was, not sure this year if you guys heard about the women's basketball, our FI team, our Mid-North basketball team, all of their home games were promoted as alcohol-free in the area, and they're, well, I suppose supported by Te Hiringa Haura, we're better without alcohol. Yes, Abby, I see you celebrating in the background. So that's a small one for Rangatahi Māori o Tauranga Moana. Koira noi ho, mo tēnei pātai. Kia ora.
Kia ora, kia ora. I think the other thing at a policy level is to be thinking about is that, there is proposed the bills. There's Chloe's scorebooks bill and there's a government bill coming up. And so if you're able to then checking those out when they start the kind of process that they do have, and when they get to the submission stage, then making submissions is good as well. I'm just having a look in the chat. I see that Jude's answered some questions around the numbers of students in the survey and where the survey was done, and about how for 2019 the data was collected from students rangatahi in the Waikato, Tamaki Makaurau and Taitokoro regions, but then we did this thing called nationally calibrated it to make it representative of the country, so that we could then compare to the earlier surveys, which were national surveys. So I wonder if anyone else, if we're thinking about what are the things that we can do at community and whānau level, school, policy level, with that, what are those things? I wonder if anyone has got anything that they'd like to suggest or comment on. And if you'd like to talk rather than do in the chat, just please, if you raise your hand, we'll try and unmute you.
I do think that another thing to point out at the community level is that extreme increase for Māori rangatahi seeing alcohol marketing more than New Zealand European rangatahi. Yep. And that was part of Chloe Swarbrick's bill, was not only to get legal application process wiped, but was also to decrease the alcohol marketing in sport. And that would obviously have a huge impact on our rangatahi if that was to go through, but I guess we'll see. Good luck, Chloe.
Yeah, and also the number of liquor outlets in a community as well. Kim, I see your request to be unmuted, and I'm looking for you in the list of people so that we can do that. There we are.
Kia ora koutou, mihi atu kia koutou tēnei ata, ahe haihi, aroha mai. Kia ora koe Makauri mo te o karakia I tēnei wā, and kia ora I tōku whanauka, Sue. Kia ora, I'm Kim Gottlieb from Mirror Services in Ōtepoti, Dunedin. I'm a Tūturu project lead. So Tūturu is a whole school approach to wellbeing with a focus on alcohol and other drugs. We work with lots of secondary schools around, we don't work with the young people, we work with the staff. We provide a suite of curriculum resources so that young people get to learn about AOD in a variety of contexts and develop their critical decision-making skills around it, including exposure to what harm alcohol advertising is doing and liquor licensing applications and that kind of thing. But we also do stuff like, we just did a whānau hui last week on AOD for whānau and caregivers of 6 of the schools that we work with. And so I just think in the education sphere, like teaching people about the moral panic that we used to have around that kind of thing, and that it's okay to have conversations with young people and providing them with evidence and data so they can take a look at it themselves and make their own, make some healthy choices around that kind of thing. So I just wanted to make sure everyone's aware of Tūturu. I can put the link to the website in the chat. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thanks so much, Kim. That's fantastic. And yeah, it would be great to have a link to that, and wonderful work that you're doing. Wonder if anyone else has got any thoughts or comments that they'd like to share.
I'd just like to say thank you, Kim, and that I 100% agree with in that it's kind of like rangatahi rangatiratanga.
Yeah.
I like giving rangatahi the information that's relevant to them and that can help them make their own decisions and their own choices about how alcohol plays out in their lives. So I'll be looking up Tūturu.
And so Dave Hokwe Kupa has in the chat has talked about whānau pack free resource, and has shared the link for that, and around highlighting the protective factors, the protective whānau and parenting factors. So it's great to have that resource as well. And Faye is talking about venue and time access, a huge contributor, opening hours and situational sites where access is for alcohol. Yep, I totally agree. Wonder if there's any other comments or questions. Yeah, and Nikki's just commented on the power that the alcohol industry has in New Zealand, particularly around lobbying, and it has a lot of money that it can use to influence governments, both national and local governments. So incredibly important. And yeah, I don't know, I was, so around the time of the end of the Commonwealth Games, I was dismayed to hear Grant Robertson being interviewed on Radio New Zealand. I think it was on Morning Report. And, you know, he's the Minister of Sports. And he was asked about Chloe Swarbrick's bill. And he said that he personally would not support her bill because it wanted to remove alcohol sponsorship in sports. And he said that alcohol funding was important for New Zealand sporting achievement. And you know, that reminded me of, I think it was the 80s, where we were having the same conversation about tobacco sponsorship. And you know, we've made a lot of progress around tobacco control since, for many reasons, but removing tobacco sponsorship was one of them. And so it was just very disappointing to hear him saying that on public radio a couple of months ago. And there's there's some quite good resources that are being popped up. There's a question there. What, in your experience of your research, is the most effective way to engage with rangatahi around alcohol harm? I think actually that Kim and the work that Kim talked about it in terms of their program, and I think that the work that's done in community and with rangatahi around alcohol. So, you know, engaging with them, having the right people that are having a kōrero with them, sharing their information so that they can make, you know, as Abby said, exert their rangatiratanga and make choices around whether and how they use alcohol. And so I think, you know, that that's the best way. I don't think that comes from our research. I think that's just kind of comes from practitioners and from community and whānau about how best to have it engage with rangatahi. Don't know if Mikaere, do you want to say anything more, and Abby?
I suppose I can add something about connection alcohol has with sports, with a liquor license that we didn't directly oppose it. We supported one of our hauora in Tauranga Pirirako hauora, and also Te Tuinga Whānau, about how a small community that has a thriving, I suppose, rugby club as well, and how there was a proposed alcohol store close to the sports club and close to the sports area, and how many drink driving cases there were, people getting caught drink driving or people having accidents. And I was shocked. It was a shock that we still, I don't even know if I'm going off topic, but it was a shock that we still lost this case with a passionate community, I suppose. The grumpy auntie of a marae that fronted this, and she was a passionate auntie / CEO of our hauora who fronted this and was so against it, had evidence of her own nephews and nieces in her own whānau getting into trouble with alcohol after big events that has been led on from sports, how we still managed to lose that as well. This goes to show how how important or how big alcohol plays, how big of a game player alcohol plays when it comes to sport as well. So sorry if I've gone off topic or stayed on topic, but something for me to add to that as well.
Come on. Any further kind of comments or suggestions or information about resources? I mean, there's some fantastic links in the chat. Mike, I'll just see, there we are. I'll just see if I can, there we are.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you so much for putting this webinar on. Yeah, my name is Mike Twala. I represent KED up here in Tamaki Makaurau. I just wanted to make a comment regarding sort of the announcement from the government around removing the special appeals process for the LEPs, and how really, just how important that is for our communities to be aware of, and really getting community voice as part of that process. And so KED have been working on a series of stories called Pūrākau for Change, and I'm happy to put that in the link in the group chat, to really look at identifying champions in the communities to share their stories around what they see in their communities regarding alcohol harm and the impact that it's having on their particular communities. But I think, we hear from politicians that the facts are there, the evidence is there, but we need more of our community being more vocal about it. So if we could really, I guess, have those opportunities and so some of those platforms to really amplify community voice would be really, really awesome. So I'm happy to share the link into the group chat, just so you could have a look at how we've been able to really bring in more of that community voice and make it a relevant issue for our communities, and something that can really fire us up. Yeah. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Mike, thank you. And it'll be great to pop that link in the chat. Jude or University Otago web support person, is there some way that we'll be able to copy all of the links out and from the chat and send them to the people who are participating today? Well, hopefully. Any other comments or questions, thoughts? Oh, great. Thanks, Jude. Jordan commented, I think another harrowing statistic is the recent release of data analysed of suicide deaths and alcohol. I haven't read that paper myself yet, so thanks for that link, Jordan. But, you know, just last Friday, I think on Stuff, there was the reporting of a coroner's finding around the death by suicide of a 17-year-old rangatahi. And, you know, mihi aroha tino nui kia ia me tōna whānau, me tōna ona hoa hoki. But, you know, absolutely no mental health issues, no risk factors, no concern about self-harm, and at a party, having a good time, then later in the evening, broke up with her boyfriend and, you know, ko mate. So, you know, absolutely agree around the importance of alcohol and terrible, terrible events like suicide. So, yeah. Well, there's no other kind of comments or suggestions or links to resources, then we might pass back to Mikaere.
And finish off?
Right.
Okay. Kabak tawa nai kore no mā tēnei te rā kau whakakapi o te rā nei. So tahi mihi atu ana kia koutou e te tini me te mano ko tai mai nei te ahi nei. Yep, so yeah, it's 12 o'clock. Mo te, I suppose, kutahi mai nei mo tēnei o ngā kaipapa o tātou. Ka tika kai roto I ngā kaipapa, I ngā hapori maha mai te tai tokirau putanua ki te Waipounamu. Kai roto tēnei take I waingani a tātou katoa. But yeah, so te hia, me mihi atu ana kia koutou katoa. Kia korua Sue, or Nikki, Jude, Ata moa koutou whakaritenga mai o tēnei o ngā hui. Ki taku hoa haere, taku rera ko hoa haere a Abby, mihi atu ana kia koe hoa. Nāui tono atu, nāui kume aku tāringa kia atu tēnei hoha ki runga I tēnei o ngā hui topa I tēnei rā. Engari, I moi tō tātou karakia ka waihono a tēnei he kōrero. I'll leave you guys with he kōrero mai tō tātou king I tāwhiao. It goes a little something like this. E kore tēnei whakaoranga e huri ki tua o aku mokopuna. We must provide our children and their children a much better platform than the one that we inherited. All of us that work around here in this space, we all must have our kids, our rangatahi in our minds all the time. Mo te apōpō te take, mo te apōpō te take. Ka waihonoa au tira, me inoi tātou. Unuhia, unuhia, unuhia. Te uru tapu nui a tāne, kia whakawātea ai te tinana, me te wairua I te ara takatu. Hoi ara e rongo whakairia, ke ki runga kia tīna, haumie, hui e, tai ki. O ki haumaru atu, return safe to your officers, I suppose, and a konei ka ki te ano. Mā te wā.